It is your prisonplanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here in this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal. Got it. We are live. It is the 28th day of October 2012. On this Sunday edition, we are barreling towards the 2012 election here in the United States. We are accelerating towards more and more open conflict with Syria and Iran, an economic implosion, and we are, well, facing a hurricane that is barreling down on the East Coast of the United States, and I've got the National Hurricane Center's breakdown of that, and it's already, they're saying, evacuate millions of people. They're saying 50 million to be affected, and now they're talking, yeah, this could mess up the election. 100-year superstorm. I'm no meteorologist, but I've interviewed a lot, and I've watched the media over the years. They tend to hype things up sometimes. Kind of like Carmageddon and things, you know, that was going to shut down L.A. forever, basically, but didn't do anything when they fixed a bridge. I talk about that because I happened to be out there when that happened. It could be hype, but most meteorologists say that if the storms from the north and the west don't blow this thing out to sea, and some of the tracks now do have it going out to sea. Just a few days ago, there were not any tracks showing it going out to sea before it first goes inland. Some showed it going out into the Sargasso Sea, out into the Atlantic. So we're going to be looking at all of that. Hurricane Sandy intermediate advisory and the trajectory and how that could affect the election. That is going to be coming up here today. Stewart Rhodes is going to be on because I've talked to a lot of military on the record and off the record. We have a lot of government documents admitting the preparations for civil unrest. Doesn't mean that's going to happen. But we know about the demonization of the founding fathers, gun owners, returning veterans, libertarians. And we, of course, last week covered a story that I first saw break out of the Northeast Intelligence Network and Doug Hagman. And a few days after we covered it, it was in the Associated Press confirming that a gentleman with no criminal record was put on a no-fly list for, 4 days, couldn't get out of Hawaii to see his wife, or he was traveling to see her in Okinawa, Japan, because they said, you're a prepper. And we see that online. So I'm going to get Stewart Rhodes, the founder and head of Oath Keepers, also a constitutional lawyer, on with us in about 30 minutes to cover that and a bunch of other really important issues and the intel he's getting from all of his current and active duty serving military and police. So we're going to have Stewart Rhodes with us. And then because we're going to get into the hurricane, the last 30 minutes of the show in more detail, Scott Stevens, a meteorologist, weatherman, worked with some of the TV stations around the country. He's the Weather Wars author as well. He's going to be getting into chemtrailing and a lot more. And we know they can control hurricanes. They can kill hurricanes. They can speed them up, slow them, strengthen them, weaken them, steer them. So could this be steered? Well, of course it could be. They have the technology. So I thought we'd go over that with Mr. Stevens coming up as well today. That said, we're going to get into the election, the latest on that when we come back. A very interesting report. Saccharin and aspartame compared with sucralose, that's a form of natural sugar, induce greater weight gain in adult Wistar rats at a similar total caloric intake levels. And this is published in the National Institute of Health. It's a prestigious study. The point is that I've seen a bunch of other studies showing this. That's why you see diabetics, incredibly obese people, always with a Diet Coke or Diet Dr. Pepper in their hand, Diet Pepsi in their hand. I guess Diet Pepsi be flavored with baby parts. I didn't believe that when I heard that 2 years ago. Looked it up, turned out it was true. So that's a big piece of news. And I got a retraction, too. I'm gonna make, or a clarification. coming up as well. It has to do with automobiles. Stay with us. I'm Alex Jones. It's Sunday. We're live, blasting out worldwide. Stay with us. Waging war on corruption. Info Warriors, roll out. We are live. Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday, the 28th day of October 2012. We're here every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central, 5 to 7 Eastern. That's 2 to 4 Pacific, 3 to 5 Mountain, and broadcasting all over the world via WWCR Global Shortwave 100,000-watt world service. Simulcasting, of course, on the internet at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com with the audio streams, and then the podcast you'll find in the Alex Jones Radio Show link area, along with free iPhone, Android apps listed there as well. You can also subscribe to PrisonPlanet.tv and see our nightly news show, 7 o'clock weeknights Central, and, of course, video inside the radio studio, not just a webcam. We're talking a 5-camera shoot. You name it, adds a whole other dimension to the info war. PrisonPlanet.tv, 9.5 years up and running, 17 years on radio. I know we have a lot of new affiliates. Just want to introduce myself. I'm Alex Jones. I love liberty. I hate tyranny. I hate bullies. And I am here to try to wake up my fellow humans to demand a restoration of our constitutional republic. I could not do the show without my incredible crew in there, and all the other great co-hosts and people with the nightly news, and some of the people that come in and visit sometimes to sit in as guest host as well, like in the 48-hour broadcast we did a few weeks ago. Again, I want to thank all those folks and salute them, because I haven't thanked them enough. I've thanked them a few times, but I just was thinking how thankful I was again today for all of you out there that make this broadcast possible, the sponsors, the AM and FM affiliates, and, of course, most importantly, the good Lord above. And after that, you, the listeners, are what is most important. Okay, Stewart Rhodes, founder of Oath Keepers, constitutional lawyer, Army paratrooper. He's got the contacts in the police and military like no one else I know, active duty, military, and currently serving here in Homeland Police. And we're going to get into all these preparations for civil unrest, the preparations for gun confiscation, the re-education camp manuals that the Army admits are now public, and what broke in the AP about a week ago. Well, it broke here, but then AP picked it up and confirmed, yeah, a guy going to visit his wife got stranded in Hawaii, no criminal record, but he was a prepper. And if you think that you need to be prepared, you know, government digs in, buys 1.6 billion rounds of ammo, builds bunkers everywhere with tax money, is constantly hardening their structures. But if you try to get prepared, they have executive orders. Just look them up to confiscate your food, your water, to put you into force work brigades. Each president has reissued them. Just type in presidential executive orders on confiscation of food, hoarders, forced labor. Look it up. You'll find dozens and dozens, because it's been reissued over and over again, sometimes multiple times by the same president. So people say, well, give us a number. Look it up. There's literally dozens of them. In fact, guys, just show people that are watching on PrisonPlanet.tv. Type in executive orders for forced labor, and then executive orders for food confiscation, or executive orders for seizure of infrastructure. Again, this is a show where we want you to check out our claims and what we're saying. Now, I'll tell you this. We are incredibly accurate over 95% of the time on average. And when I do mess up, it's generally a whopper, because I'll be out there managing stuff or signing checks or, you know, reviewing a video report during the breaks. I don't just sit around during the breaks, or my wife calls, or my kids are running around the studio, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Yeah, just click web for executive orders, guys, and it'll pull them up for you. And then just print me some of those. Yeah, there it is. Obama quietly signs executive order. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. You can pull up the whole list. There's sites that list them, and then you can go to the Federal Register as well and find them. But that's fine. Just once you get them, we'll cover them later. It's important to read those executive orders. Our film Police State 4, The Rise of FEMA, has them since the 50s and then shows them reissued. We actually show hundreds of them through time, changing in the numbers right up into the 13,000 series. They're almost into the 14,000s now in executive orders. But side issue, I was covering an article Friday on the show, and no one corrected me on this. I was listening to a rebroadcast on a local station, and heard it, and it just blew me away. I'm like, the way I was talking, it sounded like I was saying Jeep was owned by General Motors when we all know it's owned by Chrysler. I mean, I grew up with Jeeps. My dad's got a Jeep. I know that. Sometimes I listen to my show, and it's when I mess something up, it's such everybody does that. You know, you'll call people the wrong name or whatever, and it's always because I got 20 other things going on in my head, and the reason... yeah, here it is. This is out of the Washington Examiner. Jeep, an Obama favorite, looks to shift production to China. And then I was pointing out that the bailout money, $20+ billion to General Motors, you can look this up, helped move Hummer, not Hummer, they stopped that, helped move, this article says the Hummer's what fights with Jeep, that's why I said that, helped move Cadillac and helped move Volt to China. But now Jeep, separate, is looking to leave Detroit. If you got to leave Detroit because it's collapsing, even though it's a great American city or was, why do you got to leave the U.S.? Man, that's crazy. People need to let Jeep know and Chrysler know, do not move it to China. Unbelievable. Can I buy anything made in America? I've never been a Ford guy, and I've got a Ford truck now, just because I want to try to buy something made in America while you can still say something's made here. And I know most of the components are made overseas. It's unbelievable how they have set up the tax incentives and the rest of it to ship jobs out of this country. And speaking of the roads, street lights turned off in their thousands to meet carbon emission targets. This is out of London Telegraph. All over the world, including here in the U.S., they're saying they're going to start turning off most of the street lights because it's bad to have electricity because carbon dioxide that comes out of coal-powered plants is bad for the earth. Folks, plants respirate. They literally engage in photosynthesis with the sunlight using carbon dioxide. Humans exhale it. And you can type in the New York Times article. New York Times a few years ago said, "A tax to breathe." And that was an article, that was the headline, promoting this. So it's a way to shut down any industry they want, and ignore all the real environmental issues that are out there, and control one of the 4 components of the life cycle and the carbon cycle: carbon dioxide, oxygen, water, and sunlight. You've got to have those 4 things. And they know water's not bad. They know oxygen's not bad. They know sunlight's not bad. So they know that, well, carbon dioxide, they chose that back in the 80s. The Club of Rome said, we're going to try to tax this. Because a lot of Americans think it's carbon monoxide, the stuff that'll kill you. You know, they've done national TV shows. You've seen it. Penn and Teller's done it, where they can get most people to sign a petition on the street saying ban dihydrogen monoxide. It sounds pretty darn scary. Of course, dihydrogen monoxide is water last time I checked. Or they get people to ban sodium chloride. Sounds pretty darn scary. Sodium chloride. Sodium chloride. Of course, that's table salt, ladies and gentlemen. But street lights turned off in their thousands to meet carbon emission targets. Huge swaths of Britain are being plunged into darkness as more and more street lights are switched off by councils and road authorities. But the taxes are going up, though. Less services, more taxes. And they always dangle, police cuts out if you don't let them raise taxes. Standard trick worldwide. Speaking of world government, Obama urges governors to celebrate UN Day. From the NewAmerican.com, New American Magazine breaks the call for world government down. They're actually taking over the cities, the international funding and stuff. Your city will get international or even federal funding if it starts following UN rules under UNESCO. And more on cars later. Robo-cars are coming to crowded California freeways near you. And I've got a big stack of articles about, robo-cars are going to be safer. Will we not let you drive your own car soon? And the answer is, Toyota and others have said this years ago, and now I've got a new Toyota report here admitting it. They're going to say, well, the computer watches you, and if you're doing something dangerous, it'll take over. So, see, we're already talking about computers running our lives, robots running our lives, not just drones doing the fighting and combat robots. And I saw an ad on News 8 Austin when I was surfing the other day for Austin Lexus. And it was about a face scanning system. So I clicked it, and sure enough, it goes, the new Lexuses tell you if you're tired. Scan your eyes. Yeah, and they're dialed into a cell phone that'll report you to the cops down the road, just like OnStar does. They didn't tell you that part. Again, it's not the technology's bad. The globalists running it are who's bad. Hey, will the hurricane affect the election? We'll cover that when we get back. Okay, my friends, we're going to get into Hurricane Sandy right now, and I have really been hoping that all this Frankenstorm hype of the last 5 days or so was just that hype. I had really been hoping earnestly that the Blue Norther coming down and the big West Coast cold front blowing out of the Pacific, that they would get to the coast early and somehow blow that hurricane out to sea. Instead, I know you've been following it, I've been following it. It's 50 million people are in its path, and the gusts are now up to 100 miles an hour. It had been weakening a bit. Now it's strengthening. I have the National Weather Service report here in front of me. And if you go to drudgereport.com, it's got the best coverage out there. We also have a data page, basically copying his links at Infowars.com, the U.S. News section. But Drudge continually has the track, the latest, the cone, the models, the satellite, the radar. The great part about Drudge is he's not a weather channel or something where they're only showing their feeds, or other media where they won't show other people's feeds. He's got all the different perspectives up there. That's why I like it. And it's got the track, the latest, the cone, the models, the satellite, the radar. I've been on there for hours last night and today because this is a big deal. And why is this a big deal? Even U.S. News and World Report last Thursday said this could postpone the election. I didn't know that. I went on air Friday and said this could postpone the election, and saw some people on Twitter going, "You fearmonger, this will never happen." And then they walk in and go, "Here's U.S. News and World Report. Here's Reuters. Here's Fox News. Here's AP." Look, I'm not saying it's going to cancel the election or postpone it. I'm saying if you've got a hurricane that hits two cold fronts, they call that a perfect storm. They call that a Frankenstorm. The 1990 one was really bad. Nothing compared to this. They say they don't think anything's hit in like 100 years. And you can now see that it is set to start coming in, what, by Monday or Tuesday. It varies. I mean, it's already, part of it's already hitting, but it's going to get really intense Tuesday into Wednesday. And I hope it gets blown out to sea. But that big, what is it, low-pressure system with hurricanes? Trying to be, we've got a meteorologist coming on to break this down the last 30 minutes of the next hour. So he'll be able to look at that and break it down. Scott Stevens is going to be joining us. But all I know is that they're saying it can be really bad. So, and they're talking about, well, I mean, here are some of the headlines right here. New York City issues widespread mandatory evacuation orders. I said, if they issue that in New York City, mandatory evacuation orders, how many, is it 8, 9 million? How are they going to vote? This thing won't blow out, they're saying, until Wednesday. I mean, how close are we to the election then? 5, 6 days? Largest tropical cyclone to ever develop in the Atlantic Basin. Question mark. Could wreak havoc across 800 miles. Urgent warnings. Life-threatening storm surge to New York Harbor. 5 reasons Sandy will be epic. And it just goes on and on and on. I don't know. The Weather Channel says 5 reasons Sandy will be epic. And they go over the 5 reasons. It's a northbound hurricane. In fact, I know you guys printed me that article. I need to go over that later when when Scott Stevens is on the broadcast. Number 2, early winter storm. And it goes over the history of why those are so bad, mixing with other hot air. It continues here. Number 3, Arctic air from the north. Yeah, see, it's 3 storms colliding. People are forgetting it's not just that western cold front coming across. It's 3 storms, a hurricane, a blue norther, and that big western moisture-filled cold air. Again, I get to number 4. High tides could worsen flooding. We're talking about massive flooding in potentially 50 million people that are affected. The Weather Channel is reporting. And number 5, snow-wind combo increases risk for power outages. Yeah. I mean, how could this be happening in the middle of the 2012 super contested election? Now, I've had Ben Livingston, the father of weather weapons, on the show 6 years ago when it was declassified that he was the father of weather weapons, and in World War II had flown into the first typhoons in the Pacific, and he was almost 90 when I interviewed him. Still alive last time I checked. Now they got History Channel shows, with him in them, showing all the old footage. He'd lead squadrons in Vietnam, flooding the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And he said by 67, Stanford Research Institute and the Navy certified, along with the Air Force, you can look this up, that they could, we can look up our hour-long interview with him. Well, there's several at prisonplanet.tv. It's also on YouTube. Just type in Ben Livingston, weather weapons. And he goes over all the documents, showed me what he could that was unclassified now. A lot of it he couldn't show me. But we visited with him quite a bit, he and his wife. The point is that they could steer hurricanes, kill hurricanes, weaken them, strengthen them, all of it. They could create them. And you see this storm they haven't seen in 100 years. Makes the perfect storm of 1991 look tame, the meteorologists are saying. And you've got all of these storms coming together for this Frankenstorm, as it's called, set to hit the 30th, 31st, and the 1st. And then you're 5 days out from that with flooding and power outages. They're saying power could be out for weeks in the most populous area of the United States. And they're calling it a freak storm. And I thought, oh, that's just that meteorologist typing it. So I go check this. I mean, I've been weather junkie. When I was a kid, I couldn't stand being at my grandparents'. They'd want to go in and see the weather report. Or my parents would want to see the weather report. I guess as you get older, knowing the weather report's really neat. And now you can check it online. So I find that's my first stop. I'm sure the NSA knows that, tracking all my internet activities illegally. They track all yours, too, that they now had court cases admitting it and whistleblowers. It's a felony when they do it, but side issue. I guess it's land of the free, home of the brave, the most surveilled country in the world. But I've really been following this, and can't wait to get the meteorologist Scott Stevens on, because he's worked for big city TV stations, you name it. He's a researcher, author. And he's gone over the chemtrails, but not just the cloud seeding, these electromagnetic Harper rays they have. When I first heard him talking about this 10 years ago, I knew a lot of it was real, but I still I couldn't even believe it. And now, what we showed that Friday, guys, all the Daily Mail, USA Today, BBC, showing the Russians, the Chinese, the Saudi Arabians, with these antenna arrays that can go up and ionize the atmosphere, form nuclei, and make it rain out of a clear blue sky. They can form clouds and do it. So now, that's really the next generation they've had for decades. Not so much the cloud seeding, but they've got these systems, and the only people that seem to not know about this are the American people. This stuff is well known all over the world, but you talk about it, you call it conspiracy theorists. And I've just got to ask, I mean, are elements of the government, of the national security apparatus, of the national security state that's totally secret and gets away with whatever it wants, are they manipulating this storm? Or why don't they go out? Bill Gates, I showed you ABC on Friday. Bill Gates owns a company that can create or kill hurricanes. They can do it with aircraft. They can kill hurricanes. Certified, 1967. Livingston had been doing it since the 50s, but they certified it. They did tests in the Atlantic right where this is happening. Look it up. We'll be back with Stewart Rhodes. Will preppers be arrested? Will they be rounded up? Is it terrorist to take care of your family? About 5 days before it broke in AP, Reuters, The Washington Post, you name it, Doug Hagman of the Northeast Intelligence Network, who gives us a lot of good intel, he said, hey, do you want to interview a high security clearance, high-level military contractor who has been stranded and was told because you're a prepper? Okay? And then the Washington Post, because we've had him on twice before AP picked it up, spun it like, oh, he thinks that's why he was stranded at his own expense. Here's the Washington Post with a story. Man stranded in Hawaii by no-fly list gets okay and flies to San Francisco Friday. Wade Hicks Jr. was stranded for 6 days at his own expense. So there you go. Washington Post, AP, you name it. Now, this is only a window into a larger issue of how they're going to use domestic checkpoints on highways. This has all been announced. With federal checkpoints, federal police, and TSA goons. At airports, you name it, that's where you'll just be disappeared for political reasons. We now have the Army manual that I'll pull up and give you the number on, which they have said, yeah, that's their manual. Where they use the term re-education camp. They don't use the term, we'll take political dissidents. They use the Soviet term. We have the executive orders now for all sorts of tyranny. We have Army manuals about confiscating guns that have come out the last few months. All of this is coming out now, and you can just type in new Army manual has military trained for gun confiscation. Or, you know, Army War College, professor, prepare for war with the Tea Party. I mean, look up these keywords I'm giving you. This is mainstream news. And the fact is that they have been demonizing preppers for a long time. But you also look at the Homeland Security and MIAC reports that we've broken here that have been national news the last 3.5 years saying gun owners, libertarians are terror threats, but nobody's a terror threat like returning veterans. So why are preppers who run the gamut politically, who think, hey, you need food, you need firearms, basically granddaddy. My grandparents still have a grandparent alive, God bless her, almost 90. They always, you know, have a few months of food, always have firearms, always know how to can stuff. That's bad. That's why they're going after Amish. They're going after people with backyard, front yard gardens. The system doesn't like it. They're trying to restrict all sorts of swap meets, garage sales. A year ago, Louisiana passed a law, no cash used in secondhand sales. They want to track everything through the NSA grid illegally. Now, Stewart Rhodes is the founder and president of Oath Keepers, and he also is a constitutional lawyer. I'm not going to go over his entire bio, but he's won awards for the reports he's done at Yale Law School. For solving the puzzle of enemy combatant status, which he wrote many years before this was even a news item. He's worked for Congressman Ron Paul as well and his congressional staff. He's written for SWAT magazine. He's got like a 5-page bio, so I'm not going to go over the whole thing here. He was also in the Army till he was medically retired in a paratrooping night exercise, I believe it was, jump. And he joins us to go over this for the next 45 minutes. Then we'll get into the hurricane and could that affect the election and a bunch of other economic news and cover the latest poll numbers. But, Stuart, you know, I kind of threw out a couple different issues there, and I'll interrupt you a few times to actually give the Army manual numbers for people for the civilian inmate labor camp programs, for the re-education camps, and the MIAC and Homeland Security reports. While you're talking, I'm going to be searching it up myself, showing TV viewers and telling radio listeners how to pull it up themselves. It's important I don't just hold it up and say the number. I'm going to show people while you're talking. I'm going to be searching and showing people with it up on screen, live time, so they can see this for themselves. But you've got contacts everywhere in the military and the police. We do as well, but you do this full time. They're all saying, look for something big to happen soon. Now, the globalists are always doing that to get everybody on edge, so when they finally do drop the hammer, everybody almost expects it. We understand that's part of the psychology, but we do need to be made aware of this. Where should we start in this whole build-up, the Army manuals that have come out, the preppers being stranded? I've got another report here. Former cricket captain turned politician, detained and interrogated over drone views by U.S. immigration. I guess it's Imran Khan. He's very pro-Western, lived in England most of his life, probably going to be the new Pakistani president. And they pulled him off a flight and said, we don't like the fact that you're campaigning against us bombing indiscriminately with drones. So they're now using the airports. They're now using this as the political, you know, roundup point, just like Nazi Germany used the train stations as their way to grab people. And now with face scans, there's nowhere to run. Stewart Rhodes of oathkeepers.org, thank you for joining us.
Well, it's the same thing that happened during the Bush administration. Remember back then it was leftist journalists who would be on the no-fly list. Now it's swung a different direction now. Now you can say, well, it's kind of swung on the right wing, but it's not just that. It's just kind of like the metastasizing of the national security state. It is a cancer that is growing and it's starting to eat us. And so one of the two things is going to happen. It's going to kill the host, you know, kill America, or we'll have to kill it. And, you know, the preppers being targeted, what is a prepper except a person who's awake and aware and takes personal responsibility for themselves and their families? I see them as being interchangeable with Ron Paul people, interchangeable with veterans, interchangeable with just traditional Americans who believe in taking care of themselves, who are not just, you know, sitting in front of the boob tube all day and dumb down. And so it's the targeting, really, it's the targeting and the attempt to crush the traditional American spirit. They want you to be subservient. They want you to be Just go shop and do what you're told and go to work and don't question the two-party system. If you step outside those bounds at all, they'll start assigning one label or another to you. Right-wing extremist, prepper, just the latest version of it. Whatever it is, it's the same target audience, though, is the people that are going to either be able to resist or those who are going to be able to ride out whatever comes down.
And just to add, they want us to shut up and go quietly into the night while they build FEMA camps, while they deindustrialize the country, while they harass rural communities and set up the governor commission, the governor council that circumnavigates the states and the 10th Amendment. I mean, it's all happening. Anyone who knows history, as you do, as an award-winning lawyer, who's written on the subject of political papers, when you know history, you know the path we're going down. I mean, this is definitely tyranny.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the same thing that happened in Nazi Germany or also happened in Stalinist Russia. And in Russia, it was the independent farmers, the kulaks, who had to be crushed. For Stalin to really take over, he had to take out any resistance. And because they could grow their own food and their own livestock, and they were independent landowners, they were a threat to his power. He wanted them completely subservient, so he confiscated their crops and starved them.
What do you make of this new case?
Of the National Guardsman, I watched that, and he strikes me as very credible. I know you guys said you vetted him, and so I'm going to take that as being accurate. I think what's probably going on there is one of two things. Either his command has stepped out ahead in some ways and gone there, gone a little bit further down the same logical path, or this is just the first inkling of the meme coming down from above. I talked to other National Guardsmen. They have not heard anything about this, but I did find it credible, and I'm not surprised. Like I said.
Well, just to be clear, I was going to get to that in the next segment. When I said this latest case, I want to get back into the prepper confirming, that he wasn't allowed to fly for 6 days because he was a prepper, but I was going to get into that next. Yes, this National Guardsman, who even during the breaks, was out there at the a repair area, had, his officer walking around giving him orders because he'd gone too far on his lunch. He sent us all his documents, all the info. And that's what we see in this particular order. Will you guys put the resettlement document up there so I can give people the Army regulation number? If folks go to FM 3-39.40, internment and resettlement operations, February 2010, we just got this 4 months ago. You can go to army.mil and find this. It's the plan to put you in a, quote, re-education camp. So we're going to get Stewart Rhodes' take on that, get his take on why they're going after the preppers and other intel he's getting from police and military across the United States. Stay with us. Waging war on corruption every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. back. Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. That's 12 noon to 3 p.m. Eastern. And that transmission is on XM 166, as well as over 130 AM and FM affiliates and growing. Very exciting. That shows people are finally starting to wake up. Now, I want to try to give Stewart most of the floor of this segment, the next couple, and maybe take a few calls for him if you have any intel for him or like to get in touch with him. But the point is, we know we're going in an authoritarian direction. You notice media ran TV shows called Doomsday Preppers to associate the idea of anybody trying to be prepped in life, thought you're supposed to have a flashlight, food, stuff like that, as bad. And we've had Doomsday Preppers from the Doomsday Prepper show on, famous people, from different TV shows who've been taken to jail under psychological stuff and had their guns taken. We've talked about Marines that have had their guns taken for being on Facebook. I noticed that when I put out the new film, Strategic Relocation, based on the book by Joel Skousen, and we carry both of them, obviously, I produced the film, I noticed some people are there saying, what are you saying, it's the end of the world? No. We're saying that the government's digging in, and when you hear about strategic relocation, I did research and moved to the Texas Hill Country outside Austin. There's thousands of different things you can do. How to protect yourself in a city, how to get out of every city. Joel's got maps on that on all the big cities in the film and in the book at InfoWarsStore.com. But the new film, Strategic Relocation, we're going to have to even make more of these. It's probably going to sell out in like a week at the rate. This is a very hot film. Get it. It's now here. We've now got 10,000 of them right here at the operation headquarters. And we'll print 10,000 more if we need to. But and, of course, your purchase supports Joel Skousen and ourselves and everything we're doing. It's $19.95. Get a free Citizen Rule book and more. My new film, Strategic Relocation with Joel Skousen, available, InfoWarsStore.com, or link through at PrisonPlanet.com. Or we're also going to talk to Joel because, you know, it's overall his copyright on the actual content about putting it out for PrisonPlanet.tv and then to a wider audience as well. But we're still gauging that, and that's up to him. So, again, Strategic Relocation. Listen, recap with a report here before we get back into preppers and, you know, our National Guard source about saying preppers will be treated as terrorists and hunted down. I've been to urban warfare drills where that's basically what they were doing a decade ago. They just didn't call them preppers, guys in John Deere caps and overalls. You know, they trained to kill your grandpa, basically. You've witnessed that. You know that's going on. But just in this 7-8 minutes we've got before we start the next hour, you've got the floor. Recap the different papers coming out of the war colleges about how the Tea Party is going to link up with Al-Qaeda. I mean, Benedict Arnold types bizarreness. All, you know, if you had, you know, 6, 7, 8 minutes just to talk to millions of people and give them a report, which you are talking to millions, what would you say to them, Stewart Rhodes, founder of oathkeepers.org?
Well, I would say that the U.S. government is now telling you that you should take them at face value. They're telling you who their future military opponent is. And it is the general right. It is, in particular, the constitutionalist right, the Barry Goldwater conservatives, the Ron Paul supporters, the Chuck Baldwin supporters. They've been telling you this for years, so you should believe them. And actually, they're correct. We are their future military opponents because they're going down the same exact road that Nazi Germany went down or Stalinist Russia. Except that they're trying to do it here in America. And the difference is there's going to be a fight. And unless they were to, you know, I don't think they're going to back off. I don't think we have a political solution any longer. We're heading towards a fight. And so all we're really doing right now is shaping the future battle space. And within Oath Keepers, our way of doing that is to reach out to as many of the current serving military, in particular, and also police officers, sheriffs especially, and trying to get them on our side. And if we get enough of them, then we can win in a very peaceful way, like 1989 East Germany when the wall fell after 3 days because the East German military simply refused to fire on their fellow citizens. And then the other big equation in it is, of course, what the American people do. The more resilient you are, the more prepared you are, the better off you're going to be. And which is why they are beginning to also target preppers. They fear the current serving doing the right thing. They fear veterans, and they also fear all prepared Americans who are able to be self-sufficient, just like the kulaks were in Russia. Anybody can grow their own food and shelter themselves even when the power's out. They are somebody who is a threat to the plans of the elites. They want us absolutely destitute when the collapse comes, when economic collapse hits. They want us to be at their mercy and be clamoring for the FEMA bracelets and the FEMA debit cards, or even the little FEMA chip in your arm, or the Northcom versions of it. And
the forced inoculations, they admit they're trying for that.
They want you to be totally subservient. So, of course, anybody who doesn't do those things, if you want to know what to be doing, look at the things they fear. They fear people who are prepared. They fear gun owners. They fear people. They don't want you going and forming communities and forming barter networks.
They hate Christians, real Christians.
Right. They don't want you. I mean, anything that challenges their rule, anybody who has allegiance to something other than them, they want you to be totally subservient to the political system as it is right now.
That's why they hate the family.
Right. They don't want a family, allegiance and loyalty. They don't want loyalty to they don't want faith loyalty to your God. They don't want you to have loyalty to the U.S. Constitution or to the Founders Republic. They want loyalty to the government official as outside the Constitution and illegitimate as they are. They want you to have loyalty to them. And they want you to be destitute and desperate so you'll give up your rights, which is what people do throughout history. It's a constant pattern throughout history that in crisis, in wartime, is when you give up your rights. And so we're heading into a period of crisis economically. And it's coming, and I think Skousen's absolutely correct. I think that guys like Rawls, who have been talking about the American Redoubt, I think that they're correct also. You know, you need to get to, if you can't get to, you know, the Rocky Mountain West, you should at least get out of the cities. And like you did, you went to the hill country in Texas, which is a pretty awesome place. A lot of good people out there. It goes, it's kind of like that old Hank Williams Jr. song, "A Country Boy Can't Survive," and that's no joke. And if you get outside the cities, you get back to a real...
And that's what Agenda 21 is. I've got to interrupt you because everything you're saying is making me just burn with understanding. I got awake because as a child, there were military books and history books everywhere, and I thought they were entertaining to read history because, it was action every page. Why read fiction when you have to read to the end of the book to hear about battles when every page was a battle? And I've studied modern warfare. I've studied siege for 5,000 years, the oldest form of total war. They're setting us up for siege. They're setting you up like a foreign occupier would do. And, of course, anybody who's self-sufficient is the enemy. Anybody loyal to the real America is the enemy. I'm getting chills here, Stewart. I mean, it's so real. Listen, I've 95% confirmed that I'm finding NSA substations all over Austin and I mean, I've confirmed their government data mining operations. I mean, I sent reporters down to the big NSA base in San Antonio just a few weeks ago, and the cops came up and threatened them and said, "You can't film in America." And we said, "Yes, we can." So they backed off when they've taken the film from the San Antonio Express news people. We at least knew our rights and handed them, basically notice of a lawsuit and the fact that the NSA's lawsuits. But the point is, I mean, this is everywhere. Like you said, a cancer, Stewart. This is giant, and this is what you do when you're setting up an occupying takeover grid. I hope people understand this is not some nanny state that wants full control because it wants to take care of us. These are horrible globalists.
Right. I mean, it's like another level above what happened post-World War II with the growth of the national security state. The growth of the CIA, the emergence of the CIA in the 50s and all that. Now it's turned inward, and it's increasing its pace exponentially.
Well, they've said, why don't we just take over the whole economy and everything else and take over companies and arrest whoever we want?
Right. And don't you have a new CIA domestic headquarters in Denver?
Yes.
Is that where they're building the new one? So what is that? Folks are probably thinking to themselves, I never knew the CIA was ever used internally in the first place, and now they're doing it wide open. And so, what they're really doing is everything they've done overseas, all the manipulations and the coups and the assassinations they've done overseas for decades, they are now doing to the United States and to the American people. They're bringing war home. It's all been, whatever's been done in Iraq and Afghanistan or in the past in other countries will be done here. So the question is what do we do about it? And I think what we have to realize is where we are, where we're headed, and then get ready ourselves. They're getting ready. We need to get ready too. So people need to set aside their fear. They need to step out and get to know their neighbors. They need to go down to local veterans hall. And one thing I recommend you do more than anything else is get with your local veterans in your VFW hall, American Legion, or Marine Corps League, and wake them up, because that's a pool right there of people in your community who could help no matter what happens.
And a lot of them won't listen up front, but when all this keeps happening, they're going to wake up later. We're already seeing a giant awakening. I want to talk more about this with Stewart Rhodes. Stewart, what else do you want to break down coming up in the next 30 minutes?
I think we need to talk about the election and how people need to see past that. That they're so fixated on anti-Obama, they're not seeing the full picture is we're really FUBAR because the Republican Party, those who are in charge of it right now are every bit as bad as Obama.
That's right. You've worked in Congress. You've worked in Ron Paul's office, All right, second hour. Call your friends and family, folks. Tell them, tune in, however you're listening, now. This is important, what's coming up. Okay, we've got Stewart Rhodes, founder of Oath Keepers, patriot, constitutional lawyer, top of his class at Yale. I know he wrote award-winning papers there. And the point is that he is our guest here. And I wish he was wrong. Every time he's on, it really freaks me out because I know he's right. I study this stuff constantly. Remember, I'm the guy that made Police State 2000 in 1999. I'm the guy that said the military's coming to get your guns because I went and saw them drill to confiscate guns in America. And then we saw it in Katrina. All of it is a battle test. All of it is conditioning. It's all laboratory tests. They call it that. It's shaping the future battle space. Whether it's MIT Magazine or stuff out of West Point, for 15 years, I have had countless contacts, and even had them on air, ROTC students at college being trained to be future officers, and they almost always train to fight militias and gun owners. They've been shaping this battle space for a long time, and I think that's what Stewart was getting to about, don't think Mitt Romney's going to save you. And we're going to get into identifying 3 trends in far-right violence in the United States, what the Army's being taught, that the gun owners are evil. This is USMA, EDU. We're going to be getting into that. This is a short segment here, though, Stewart, before we come back and get into all that. Tell us about Oath Keepers and how people can get involved with that. The awesome black caps you've got with Oath Keepers on it, how people can support you.
Well, the main point of Oath Keepers, as I said, is to do the best we can to get those in the ranks to understand their true loyalty to the American people and to our Constitution. And even more basic than that, to liberty itself. That's what our country is defined by. The American Revolution was fought for liberty, and everything after that was supposed to be to secure and further our freedom. And of course, we all know that's not the way it's worked out. But we want to bring them back to that core root of their duty and obligation and their identity. They're Americans first, not just obedient to whoever happens to be in the White House or who happens to be running the banks. And so their loyalty is to the Declaration of Independence and to liberty. And so if we can do that, we can achieve a stand down within the military. And we're not saying that we want them to sit on their hands and do nothing if we're invaded. If the UN comes in, of course we want them to fight. If it comes to a fight here in America, we'd like them to be on our side. But our dream would be to a mass peaceful stand down like happened in 1989 East Germany, where the East German military stepped aside and stayed out of it. And without their support, the Stasi secret police, as feared as they had been before, turned out to be, paper tigers. They could do nothing without the support of the military behind them, and they ran and hid because they were so outnumbered by the people.
Let's make no mistake. Let's make no mistake. What we're doing right now will affect history. This is not a game, folks. We're not up here saying this to scare you. How do you respond to that? People say, this is scary. No, it's good to know the facts and prepare for it. We believe you have courage, America. We believe you want to say no to this takeover. This is a real authoritarian, social engineer, globalist, sickos, psychologist-run, New World Order, control freak system. These are nasty people.
Right, and we should recognize reality. Like Patrick Henry said, it's better to know reality or know the facts and provide for it than to delude yourself with false hope. Recognize how bad it is, but also don't give up. Understand that we are different. We are not Chinese peasants or Russian peasants. We are Americans. And we have a legacy and a history of fighting for freedom and resistance, and so we can do it. I think if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't even try to do what I've been doing, and you wouldn't either. We would just, I don't know what we would do. Who knows what we would do? But we know that there's a chance, and so what's going on now is, like we said before, in one interview, I believe you said that when there's crisis, there's a window that opens up, but it goes both ways. I think that's absolutely correct. We are in a moment of crisis in this country. When the window's opened, they want to shove through their total lockdown and total grid control society. We have to push back with what it is that makes us all Americans, which is our Declaration of Independence and our Bill of Rights and our own self-independence.
Exactly. People should pinch themselves if they're not fully awake yet. FEMA badmouths the Founding Fathers. They demonize people that believe in freedom. I mean, think about how outrageous these authoritarians are. We'll be right back with Stewart Rhodes, and I'll give the number out if you'd like to join us on air. Stand by. Welcome back. Second hour here. I'm going to give the number out so you can get a few calls into Stewart Rhodes. Only have time for 5 or 6, but we'll see who's able to get on air in the next segment. The toll-free number to join us if you have any questions about the martial law incremental takeover we see happening. It's 877-789-ALEX, 877-789-2539. And let's give first-time callers a chance, specifically on the National Guard going under Northcom, Brigade Homeland, TSA checkpoints on highways, the NSA admitting they spy on you illegally, just the absolute criminal lawlessness. They have street lights going up nationwide. I've confirmed they're putting some in here in Austin. I've got to go out and do the report. With the IntelliStreet style design. There's a bunch of companies doing it where the street lights watch you and listen to you secretly, wired into the threat fusion centers. Folks, this is all for us. It was never for Al-Qaeda that works for the globalists. That's now admitted that Al-Qaeda works for NATO. They're using them against Syria and Libya, and then separately saying, oh, Obama didn't give enough, support to, to the CIA to protect the embassy staff. Because the group they were paying for security are the ones that went and killed the ambassador, folks. I've got to give my rights up because of Al-Qaeda when the criminal government runs Al-Qaeda. against the Serbs, against the Russians, against everybody, and they use them to take our rights. Stuart, briefly on that front, and then give people a briefing here, because a few times ago when you were on, I likened it to a cheesy Star Trek analogy. When the Klingon bird of prey has to decloak to fire, okay? And that's what happens historically. When the tyrants get ready to move, they've got to build up, they've got to roll out, and we can point it out before they try to clamp down, and then stop them if we build enough political mass and understanding so they can't sell it on their cover story. And I want listeners to understand the historical point we're at. The globalists admit, Brzezinski's new book, one of their master planners, that they are 7 to 10 years behind. So they're trying to accelerate it because they know worldwide people are waking up to them. The euro is now forming a world dictatorship, the core of it over the euro, and bragging about it. This is all happening. World governments being announced. And they can't have those of us that were right about this and have credibility out running around. They want to come arrest us. They're preparing for that in the Army manual I read earlier. But that shouldn't scare you. That shouldn't scare you because the NSA is spying on you. I'm going to go protest the NSA in San Antonio. As soon as I get the time, I'm going down there. Okay? I mean, major reporters have had their cameras taken for major newspapers. They didn't take ours because I had them give them the news article about the NSA losing a lawsuit. We're allowed to go show them illegally spying on us in America. You got to exercise these rights or lose them. Stuart, you've got the floor in the 10 minutes we got before we go to break and come back with some calls. Give people the briefing. Tell them what they're teaching the military, what's happening at Northcom. Give them a breakdown on the force structure and the treasonous conversion of the military into a domestic Gestapo force.
Well, we already saw the article by Colonel Benson out at Leavenworth, who is no small fry. He's one of the major instructors there at Leavenworth, where he called the Tea Party future military opponent of the U.S. military for domestic deployment. And now we also have added to that, we have the Combating Terrorism Center, at West Point, and there's an article published there identifying 3 trends in far-right violence in the United States by R.L. Perlinger, and he's the director of that center at West Point. And so these are just, like I said before, they're telling you right out in the open who their future political or future military opponents are. And of course, this article from West Point lumps what they call the anti-federalists. He calls us anti-federalists. It's kind of a new term they're applying now, hearkening back to the anti-federalists who opposed the Constitution back in 1787 or 1789. He calls these anti-federalists. Then the next wing of supposed right-wing violence is racism, the racist trend, and then he has one more, which is the religious trend or a Christian identity trend.
Oh wait, he also says in here, anybody can pull this up, West Point, he says that the Tea Party, what is it, in North Carolina, they predict will link up with Al-Qaeda. That is the most asinine thing I ever heard.
I missed that. Is that in there? I missed that.
There's several of these. We actually wrote an article about it at the time. I know they've written several, but yeah, no. I mean, they talk about, they talk about Paul Watson wrote about it. Go ahead.
Okay, so here's the big point, folks, is that the U.S. military is now within their own ranks, within the officer corps. They're doing much the same thing that's been going on within the police. The SPLC has infiltrated the police across the country and has been brainwashing them to believe that, if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in natural rights, you believe in the autonomy of the individual, that you're somehow a potential cop killer. And as Alex has shown many times, they've got, running around calling the founding fathers terrorists, things like that. Well, now it's spread into the U.S. military. Which we knew was happening, but now they're, as you just said a minute ago, Alex, they're being much more upfront about it. The mask is coming off. They're doing it very overtly. And the reason is that they're running out of time. They need to brainwash as many of the military as they possibly can to see traditional conservative Americans or just, libertarian Americans, anybody who believes in freedom, gun owners, preppers, you name it. Anybody like that, they want to smear you and then lump you in with racist and lump you in with people who, either neo-Nazi or Christian identity.
If you don't like Obamacare, you're a racist. We've all heard this.
Right. So this is what's happening, and being much more overt about it. And so I think that's a good sign. I think that it shows that they're so worried and so desperate to demonize us that they're pulling out all the stops. But I think it's too late. I think prepping has gone mainstream. I think that loving the Constitution's gone mainstream.
Guns have gone mainstream from used to sell a few 100,000 a month to 3, 4, 5 million a month. You're right. Look, they've lost our trust. I heard the Austin police chief on the radio Friday saying the people don't trust the government anymore and we've got to get their trust back. I mean, the system knows. Go ahead.
Exactly, and so that's why they're desperate, but you know, it's too late. The cat's out of the bag. The idea of freedom, thanks to Ron Paul and thanks to the whole Ron Paul movement especially, the idea of freedom has grown exponentially in the population. And so now I would say there's about 20% of Americans who are pretty wide awake. But what I encourage them to do, though, is to not just be awake, but also be prepared.
Yes.
You know, you need to get yourself squared away with your food, your water, your emergency power. Emergency communications, especially important. You need to get networking with other people. The answer, as you said a little while ago, is not to cower in fear and try to hide. They want you to do that. Another part of why they're being so open is they want to chill you. They want you to be afraid of being identified as these things. Oh, I don't want that label on me. I don't want to be labeled a prepper. So I better just shut up and stay in my house.
Boy, it's having the opposite effect on everybody I know. I think a lot of it is I've run into these globalist minion engineers and people. You know, they're psychologists, they're psych warfare people. They are so emasculated and chicken-necked and neurotic. They're attacking us with programming they think would work on them. They're smart, but not that smart. Their blind spot is they think we're like them.
No, you're right. I mean, they're kind of autistic in that sense, right? They're really brain smart, but they don't understand. They don't understand us. It's like a foreign alien species to them. They don't understand us. They don't really get us. And they think that what worked in other countries will work here, that what worked in East Germany will work here. And it's not working. All it does is piss us off. And so that's good. And so the attitude should be not to become afraid when you hear about all the stuff that's happening. The attitude should be righteous anger, and then decide to do something about it. And what you need to do about it is we are in the lead up. It's like 1774, 1773. We're in a lead up to conflict. Get squared away like your forefathers did. They didn't just sit on their hands, nor did they just grab their musket and go out in the streets. They got ready.
Oh, they engaged in the committees of correspondence, the Sons of Liberty, for 15 years before. They hit the ground and exposed the enemy takeover.
And communities of safety, and their militias, they got ready. And so in the modern context, that means, you know, forming groups with your neighbors, with your close friends. It also especially means getting together with the veterans in your community, forming a sheriff's posse, backing up a good sheriff. All the things we talk about on Oath Keepers and our sister site, you know, the Operation Sleeping Giant site, is what we encourage you to do. Focus on your preparedness first, then your security second, then your sound money and alternate currency and barter networks third.
Stay there, my friend. Stay there. We're going to come back and take some calls. And things are moving fast. Let's get Stewart Rhodes back on the next few weeks for like 2 hours to take calls during the week. Folks, this is it. I mean, this is real. We can beat these people if we will recognize the enemy operations. I know it's hard to believe it's happening. We have an infiltration, foreign corporate banking infiltration. They want to convert us to a total slave state to rob us. We got like 12 calls there. That's just what we opened up on the phone system for our guests. There's no way to get to all of them. We'll try to get to some of them. I just hope listeners understand here, if you're tuning in for the first time, this is not a game. Most Americans don't have any historical perspective anymore. It hasn't been taught. If you know basic history, this is like, you know, knowing what a grizzly bear looks like in Colorado, and you walk out on your back porch and there's a grizzly bear. I mean, it's a grizzly bear. Well, if you know history, this is tyranny. This is scary. It's real. And giving into it is what's dangerous. We've got to say, hey, you're wrong. You're out of control. And serving this will not help you. They want an authoritarian model because they say they don't want the free market system of prosperity. That makes you uppity. And they're using kind of a communist model to take over, even though it's really corporate fascists that sit above it. They want to make you dependent at the grassroots. They want to make you dependent at the grassroots so that you're dependent on their system. You're domesticated. And they want to use a shutdown of society mode to make you dependent. That is a classic communist model under Mao, under Lenin, under Stalin, under Fidel Castro. And believe me, as someone who studied political science, it freaks me out. You know, Stewart, after serving in the Army, graduated summa cum laude from the University of Nevada. Then he went on to graduate law school from Yale, where he won the top big award there at the law school, solving the puzzle of enemy combatant status before this was even discussed. He won Yale's Judge William E. Miller Prize for Best Paper on the Bill of Rights, and will continue. He also assisted teaching U.S. military history at Yale History Department. I want to jam in 4 or 5 calls here, Stuart, but with quick questions, callers, so don't thank us or anything. Let's just get right to your data. God bless you so we can get to more of you. Stuart, as a military historian, you're not just, not just a constitutional lawyer. Am I wrong in saying Danger Will Robinson, Red Alert? I mean, this is incredible.
No, and that's what that's what grabbed me back in 2001 and 2002 when I was doing my research in the wake of 9/11. Like I said, the laws of war are being brought home, and I can see it happening legally. And when they build something, and they build the infrastructure, it's going to be used. So they built the American version of the Stasi. That's the NSA and the DHS. It's going to be used here at home on us, just like it was used overseas. When they build the infrastructure for NORTHCOM and for domestic deployment of the U.S. military under its own separate command, it's not under the Army, it's not under the Marine Corps. It's this new body, like a new branch of the military for domestic use. It's going to be used. And that's exactly why.
Not under your governor. I mean, they're circumventing everything. And then calling us anti-federalist when they're overthrowing the federal system.
Yeah, this is kind of ironic, because they're using the label applied to opponents of the Constitution to people who are trying to preserve the Constitution. Although the anti-federalists, like Patrick Henry, turned out to be right in the long run, frankly.
I guess they did. Okay, let's go ahead and go to a phone call here. Let's go to Daniel in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing, Alex?
Good, sir.
I had a statement for Stewart, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. And by the way, you live in a beautiful city. I was just there recently. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Hey, Stewart. My name's Daniel, and I'm a former United States Marine, and I know a thing or two about martial arts, fitness, and also the InfoWar. And I wanted to get your blessing to thread the Oath Keeper's message with the InfoWar's message and make my own little boot camp in Sherburne National Forest here in the Chapel.
Well, I mean, for him to openly give you some kind of thing, like, he'd have to know who you are. Sir, just people ask, can I put your bumper sticker on my car? You go, folks. But, I mean, he obviously can't certify what you're doing. Don't wait for orders from headquarters. Go to the sound of the guns. Thanks for the call. Stuart, comment.
Yeah, he can just write me at Oath Keepers through our contact there, and I'll take a look at what he's doing.
Let's go to...
People need to get squared away. I recommend, like I said, my recommendation is to focus on your veterans groups that already exist, rather than trying to start some new entity. Go to the veterans groups that are already there.
And do it all out in the open, mainstream.
Yeah.
We're the good guys. Creeping around, you'll run into infiltrators and troublemakers.
Right. Don't do anything you wouldn't want on the national news, because you're stronger that way. Be open and
listen, I stomp up to the NSA bases. I stomp up to the troops. I'm the guy fighting the takeover and the tyranny. We're the good guys. They see us like Godzilla in Tokyo, Stuart.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think, we do need to train, and you do need to pass your knowledge on. So I think you're right to do that. But my recommendation is to do it through your local VFW or Marine Corps League. Wake them
create
up.
An Appleseed group. People need basic rifle skills first. Operation Appleseed.
Well, if you got other skills you want to teach, by all means, go for it. Just be aware that you're going to have infiltrators. You're going to have a mole who's going to come in there and try to get you to talk about doing illegal stuff.
Yeah, they put a mole in it to act like what you're doing is bad. Let's go to another caller here. Caleb in Virginia. You're on the air with Stewart Rhodes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I live in Fredericksburg. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that's right where the storm's going to be hitting.
Yes, sir.
And are you aware of the 100,000 National Guardsmen getting sent to the Northeast?
Yes, I am aware they're mobilizing and declaring mandatory evacuations in areas of New York City, which, I mean, how are they going to have an election if that's the case?
Yeah, like I said, I'd see it getting postponed, but I was calling, there's National Guardsmen everywhere in my town. Police officers on every street. It's crazy.
Well, that's when you're supposed to have them, though, is when you got a giant hurricane with a bunch of other storms coming together. Anything else? Any questions for Stuart?
That's it.
Thank you, sir. God bless. Stuart, what is your take briefly on the election?
Well, I think it's a dog and pony show, frankly. I don't think this is also kind of interesting. And this National Guard we talked to the other day, he said that they were briefed and told that if Obama loses, there's going to be rioting by Obama supporters. They're going to look at the preppers as the big threat, which is really kind of strange. It's like they're hedging their bet. whichever way it goes, preppers going to be targeted. So this way they can go ahead and target preppers even if Obama loses. So it's like heads you lose, tails we win, you know?
That's right. Don in West Virginia, first-time caller. You're on the air. Welcome.
Yes, sir.
West Texas, excuse me. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good to see you today. The storm-affected area, how far do you think the government will try to extend their authority outside that area or use this as a test run for what we're looking at?
Yeah, that's a great point. They use every disaster or problem as a reason to power grab. Look at Katrina. Stewart.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, like the last caller, the answer is go out there and talk to those cops and talk to the National Guardsmen before the storm hits and say, look, guys, don't do what happened in Katrina. Do not go down that road. And you got to get out there and outreach to them now.
And by the way, as you proved and broke later, a lot of the Army actually said no. The media acted like the Army was happy to confiscate guns to sell the normalization of it. The truth is a lot of them said no.
And that did not make the news. That's right. And so don't take it for granted they'll do what they're told, but also make sure you go out there and talk to them. I mean, who knows what effect you could have. You going up there and talking to them saying, look, we're here to back you up and help you. Just don't try to disarm us or violate our rights. That can make a big difference to the guys on the ground and what they do.
That's right. You know, the system says comply, comply, do what you're told. They teach the clergy response teams to, you know, the preachers that have been bought off as collaborators to tell everybody, do what you're told during the emergency. No, we're the head of the government. We obey the Constitution Bill of Rights, Romans 13. And they're actually twisting that and saying serve tyranny. Stewart Rhodes, I want to get you on soon about Operation Sleeping Giant. Thank you and God bless you during the weekday show soon. Coming up, we'll look at the storm with a meteorologist straight ahead. Stay with us. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com, their site, oathkeepers.org. We'll be right back. A couple of program broadcast notes for listeners. You're tuned in right now to the Sunday show every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central. There's the weekday show, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central, 12 noon to 3 p.m. Eastern. And Jesse Ventura hadn't done any interviews in about a month. But he's given us the first one tomorrow, noon. Jesse Ventura has been turning down CNN, Fox, you name it. But I talked to him Friday. He's coming on the broadcast tomorrow in the second hour. We're talking about a bunch of stuff. Some of it will be breaking news. A bunch of it he told me I can't repeat on air. I'm like, why are you telling me all this, but I can't say it on air? Who knows what he'll say tomorrow. The point is Jesse Ventura, former Minnesota governor, he'll be joining us tomorrow. I got a bunch of other big guests throughout the week. I'm just going to leave it at that. And it is my distinct pleasure to be on air and be able to talk to all you great people. I feel horrible trying to go to the calls like I'm being rude. Hurry up, because I just want to get to more people, but I'll try to jam in some of the folks that are holding right at the end of the broadcast. The guy we've got on has been on a few times in the past. Need to have him back, and so he's here. We're going to be talking to Scott Stevens in a moment. Speaking of waking people up, like Stewart Rhodes was saying, Internet Kill Switch this, the InfoWars magazine. You can buy them in groups of 10 up to 100 at cost. We're talking, 10 colored, now glossy magazines, very high quality, full of powerful info and factoids. These are like little books for $1 and change a piece, $14.95. You can get, I think that includes the shipping, yes. You can get them at cost at InfoWarsStore.com. And the reason I hype them so much is that I just love waking people up. I go to public places here in Austin and drop them off all over. So InfoWars also put 70,000 of them on the streets now. That's kind of what I'm into. But I personally am dropped these off and hand them out to people. Probably handed out 100 today myself. I go to the store. I go to the gym. I go to the hike and bike trail. Oh, Santa Claus is coming to town. Because it's so good to engage people at point-blank range. So again, ladies and gentlemen, InfoWars magazine, InfoWarsShop.com. You can get 12 issues sent to your friends and family's door. Shipping's included in the price you see there at InfoWarsStore.com, not just buy them in bulk. And then your friends and family will get 12 torpedoes of truth to shatter the lies, mailed to them over and over again. The police station, give them a subscription. Your preacher, give them a subscription. Get aggressive in the InfoWar and get the new film, Strategic Relocation, Safe Places to Live. Even micro areas around your town or major city, and just all sorts of unbelievable data, the new film, along with the book available at Infowars.com. Okay, Scott Stevens is an award-winning television weatherman who a decade ago began investigating claims by Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden that North America was being subjected to full-time weather modification. Now the White House science czar admits they're doing it. During the course of the personal investigation, he was the first to discover the primary reason for the now global chemtrail phenomenon. Scott co-hosts a weekly radio program, and he also joins us right now. Now, since he talked about this 10 years ago and Bob Fletcher 20 years ago and all this, and even back then I'm like, hey, I don't know. Now it's like, hey, the Saudi Arabians, people in Dubai, they're making it rain with these antenna farms. Cloud seeding's the old way to do it. The HAARP and all of this. So he joins us because Hurricane Sandy. Well, first off, I want to ask him as a meteorologist, as a weatherman, is it going to be as bad as they're saying, A, with 3 storms coming together, Frankenstorm, and then B, does it look like it's been manipulated? Because weather wars, weather weapons, foreign governments, our own government, I mean, this may postpone the election. Hey, Stanford Research Institute, Ben Livingston, certified 1967 the government could create and steer hurricanes. That's Fox News, AP, Reuters. Scott Stevens, my friend, tell us what you think's going on right now.
I think it'll not be as bad as everybody's hyping it up to be.
Good.
Storm after storm after storm. You know, they prep, they shut down cities, they do all of these things, and it shows up. Yes, we have power lines down. Yes, we have trees down. Yes, we have flooding. But as far as the Katrina-like damage, I don't see that happening. The wind speeds are not there for that to happen. Now, what it has been curious, as I'm in the West, I've relocated myself to a safe zone in southern Colorado. I'm up at 8,000 feet in a small, self-sustainable community. What we have seen here is intense engineering. And what they are doing is digging this trough out west to fold Sandy back in along the coast. Earlier in the weekend, actually like Thursday, Friday, it was going to be a New York City landfall, maybe Bridgeport, Connecticut. Now it's southern Jersey. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the Delmarva Peninsula. And so they're just slowly pulling this thing a little bit farther south. So you scare the holy bejesus out of the New Yorkers. They shut down their transit system, and in hindsight, they'll see that that was unnecessary. But the water that's going to come out of this thing from Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, southern Pennsylvania, D.C., Northern Virginia, and then eventually to New York State will be monumental. And that's going to be the thing. It's going to be the downed trees that are still full of foliage, power lines down. There may be locations that are 2 weeks without power.
All right, weatherman, meteorologist Scott Stevens joins us. Scott, I mean, so you're saying, I mean, obviously they admit there's programs, but they're secret. Weather modification, you know, mainstream news admits that. You're saying you're seeing them use that trough to pull the hurricane down towards the south.
Absolutely. Everything is connected, Alex. Everything is connected. The same time they're digging this trough out west, then they're pumping up a ridge to block the movement of Sandy. Once she becomes extratropical, once she's trapped over land, then a ridge is amplifying off into the western Atlantic, so she has nowhere to go. And so she is boxed in, and she'll rain, and she'll rain, and she'll rain. Rain and water is going to be the problem with this thing. Once we deal with the downwinds, and she kind of spins down in her core wind speed velocity, it's going to be the monumental water that comes out of the storm. Because the cold air, we had places in northwestern Canada, the northwestern territories, that were 0 to 15 below this morning and yesterday morning. It's that cold, dry air that is going to bomb this storm out in the next 24 to 48 hours. And so she will get energized. Even as we look at her spinning down as a tropical entity, it will be reborn as this extratropical perfect storm across Maryland, Pennsylvania. And that is going to impact people's ability to get around, not so much by Election Day, but in the immediate several days. And so it's all about the rebuilding. It's all about spending the money afterwards. And that's where you can't get Congress to budge on stimulus. It's all about having to do it because we have a disaster to clean up afterwards. Then the people demand it.
And by the way, as you know, they now have on the Chicago Mercantile weather modification exchanges where they bet on the weather. You can literally pull up, no exaggeration, thousands of articles admitting all the other governments that are controlling their weather. But then they say, oh, but we're not doing it. But they admit they've got programs, but that it's just secret. How much weather modification is going on? How does the persistent condensation trails, known as chemtrails, how does that tie into it?
I think they are used, I know they are used as markers. When you're going to lay down an energetic change, whether you're using HARP, whether you're using scalar, whether you're using the Oregon energy, I don't care what tool you're going to use. You need to gauge the efficacy of whatever button you've pushed. And so once you've pushed the button, you need to know what that zone, what
so it's like when they put ink into your vein to track where blood's going in your body, or when they put a radioactive substance in to have markers on tumors.
Exactly. It's like laying a light wire or a string across a stream of water that's flowing, and then you can see how that stream undulates. Then you can gauge where the eddies, where the currents are, and these are powders, and you can see
so
how
it's gun sights. They're using the aluminum dioxide, barium salts as gun sights, basically, for their antenna arrays.
And then once you've sighted the gun, you pull the trigger, you see how those chemtrails respond to that addition of the energy. You lay down the grid, apply your electromagnetic solution, observe, and then you go out and remeasure. So it is a continual program. Once they began in the 60s, it's never ended. And people are so excited that chemtrails are a recent thing. Oh, middle 90s, they exploded. That's crap. It's been going on since the 60s. The earliest pictures I've got are 1976.
Well, I agree with you, but it did explode in the 90s, though. I mean, it went from testing to full operational.
I think they were fully operational even before that.
Well, I've had Ben Livingston on. I mean, he was flying into typhoons in World War II, the father of weather weapons. That's what he says. He just says it's classified. We'll be right back. I've been watching, boy. I tell you, I mean, if you just type in weather modification, geoengineering, Bill Gates is doing it, says he can control hurricanes. Yeah, of course they can. But then you bring this up, oh, there's no way that they're, trying to make the hurricane bad for the election. And then we have a weatherman on breaking down the fact that, yes, it looks like it's manipulation. And I've got all these clips of local meteorologists all over the country saying, this is not normal. They're spraying something here. Since you started talking 10 years ago, as a meteorologist looking at this, it's really opened up now. When the White House science czar 3.5 years ago, the first speech John P. Holdren gave was to the AP. He gave a speech to the AP. They videoed it. He talked about geoengineering and how they've been testing it. So everything's testing because under U.S. Code Title 50, Chapter 32, subsection 1520A, paragraph B, they can do any testing, including lethal stuff, if they call it research. Go ahead, meteorologist Scott Stevens of weatherwars.info.
That's been the situation. It took me a while to get on board with this, Alex. I had come across research right around 98, 99, come across the term chemtrail, and I decided I needed to figure out what this word was. I was always an alternative media kind of guy, being in mainstream and knowing how little information actually gets to the end user. And so I needed to figure this out. And so it was a couple of years before I figured out how the chemtrails played into this grand game of weather manipulation. But they go hand in hand. Not so much that the chemicals impact the storms, but that they are needed there to guide and to gauge the efficiency, the efficacy of the technologies.
Because even the best computer models can't accurately predict from what other meteorologists have said, because it's so complex, they've got to just test what's going on and then manipulate that.
And I think part of that is crap. I think the models are messed up because there's some piece of data, there's some input that they're not getting.
You're saying it's messed up because they don't want anybody to be able to tell what's going on.
Because they're not including the weather modification data in the weather models. If that data was included in the models, then we would have an exceedingly accurate forecast. You can have your forecast for next Friday emailed to you on your iPad or your phone and have it so accurate it would be stunning.
But they're manipulating it so you can't.
No, they're saying they can't do it now. But it's because of this modification. And so even today in 2012, weathermen are no more accurate than they were in 1980. That's what's disturbing. And that's what had me, deep in this research and willing to go down this rabbit hole because I did not like getting up in front of an audience and having to apologize for a busted forecast. And I needed to know why these forecasts were wrong time and time again. Why in the heck were the guys in D.C. flubbing it up?
Well, let me just stop you for a minute. We've got a London Guardian article up from July. It says U.S. geoengineers will spray sun-reflecting chemicals from balloon. Experiment in New Mexico will try to establish the possibility of cooling the planet by dispersing sulfate aerosols. So now they're introducing it in literally hundreds of articles a month, like they're just now inventing it. When it was 67, certified by the U.S. government, declassified in 2006, they could create hurricanes with only about 10 aircraft, but punching it back up, they show that corona around the sun that we see when they're chemtrailing constantly. There it is.
So we're back to problem, reaction, solution. Problem is global warming. Problem is climate change. Reaction is we have to do something about it. First of all, it was CO2. They did get that shoved down our throats. So 3 is that disasters have to be so bad that we have to do something active. We have to alter the chemistry of the atmosphere to get things changed. And so this is where they're going to lay this gently out in front of the people. This agenda has been laid out, and to be honest with you, Alex, I believe they are flabbergasted that they've been able to do this blatantly and in plain sight for 4 decades without us being none the wiser.
Sir, they're now putting cameras all over the place in the new streetlights where I live, and no one cares. I mean, most people care, but they believe they have no power. And we've confirmed data mining NSA bases in Austin where I live, not just the giant one in San Antonio. I mean, they're openly watching everything we do criminally. They just do what... Sir, every major vaccine, when it gets tested, has all these cancer viruses in it, and no one wonders why cancer is exploding. You're right. They just do it all in plain view.
Yep, and they have to tell us that they're doing it, because karmically, it would be horrific for them on the other side if they weren't honest with us. And they are honest.
That's right. They have these weird metaphysical rules, whatever you want to call it. Look at this article. This is the National Institutes of Health. Saccharin and aspartame compared with sucralose induce greater weight gain in adult Worcester rats and similar total caloric intake. I mean, they've always known aspartame.
So how many skinny people do you see drinking diet sodas?
You don't. You see giant fat people doing it.
And there's a reason.
But I mean, my point is they're killing us. It's sick.
Well, and I don't think this is the kill shot, again, because karmically, metaphysically, the cost is too great for them for the thousands of lifetimes afterwards. They will wait for the planet to do it. I believe there is a kill shot coming.
You know what's funny? I don't believe in all that, but the globalists, it's funny you say that, Ted Turner and others,
they do.
They're obsessed with it. And
you have to understand how they think so you can see how they play the game. And once you understand that, then you see that they will weaken the population, but they won't pull the trigger. They'll let some external energy pull the trigger. And then we're so disconnected from our environment, disconnected from our family, disconnected from ourselves, that when the kill shot happens, that we're left like worms in the hot sun.
Wow.
And we're unable to find our way into a stable, suitable, and healthy environment.
That's right. And then they always get to be the saviors, though, from whatever problem they've lined up. They tee up the ball, but then let something else hit it.
Exactly. They set the stage, and what we're not going to like is the last act in the play.
Well, I agree with you that they're using weather weapons to create extreme weather that then sell this global government that you pay carbon taxes to save you from it. They even brag about that. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. And you're saying as a meteorologist, you're seeing evidence of this hurricane being manipulated.
It has been from the get-go. Alex, there's not 1 square mile in the Northern Hemisphere that isn't managed. Not 1 square mile. What I'm dealing with is how far back that control goes. And it's at least 15 years, and it may be 20 years. And this was my whole worldview that changed in 2004 when I had this epiphany. And this is why Michael Murphy's Why in the World Are They Spraying is so important, even though the reasons and the reasons why the chemtrails were there were not very clearly articulated in that movie.
Sure. Well, we sell What in the World Are They Spraying, and then we've got Why in the World Are They Spraying at InfoWarsStore.com. I mean, I started making a chemtrail film 5 years ago, and there was so much evidence and so many patents and so many admissions under scientific names that I never even got it done because it was just ridiculous.
That was me. I started in 2008, and there was just so much to do. And I had made some investments in the metals. And then when the whole economy went to the toilet in 2008. They crashed the metals prices. I wasn't able to leverage what should have been a bonanza, into this film.
Well, listen, we're basically out of time. I want to get you back on in the near future to break down more as a meteorologist what you see coming up.
Alex, we've got so much to talk about.
But we've got about a minute or so left here, Scott Stevens. You're saying it is being manipulated and controlled, but that it's going to be some flooding, but not that bad. It's just another way to soak the economy.
It's another way to soak the economy, and we're bankrupt, so how are we going to repair it? That's really what the big disasters that are imminently down the road we're going to be faced with. Is how do we fix this when we have no money?
And we're under Agenda 21 meant to shut down our industry. But I am seeing people starting to wake up. Are you seeing that?
Yep, it's happening. It's happening. Subscribe to the Weather Wars on YouTube. Find me on Facebook, and we'll get this to go viral so we finally have a global discussion.
Weatherwars.info is a great site.
There we go.
All right, thank you so much.
Alex.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. There he goes. Okay, I'll be back tomorrow, folks. Lord willing, 11 a.m. Central, 12 noon Eastern, with the big 3-hour weekday show. If your local station isn't carrying it, hey, give them a ring. A lot of stations pick up the Sunday show and end up picking up the weekday show. That's quite frankly one reason I started doing this Sunday show 6 years ago, to get our foot in the door with a lot of stations. Look, I wish this stuff wasn't true. But if you research it, sometimes it's not as bad as we think, but most of the time it's worse than we think. And I wish that wasn't the case. I got 3 children. I got a wonderful wife. I got a great family. I don't want all this to be happening. But you got a scientific technocracy that thinks they're God with unlimited tax money from us, with a bunch of crazy scientists, eugenicists, population reductionists. Great job to the crew. And again, Lord willing, 11 a.m. tomorrow. Infowars.com is the website, prisonplanet.com. And we're also streaming video at prisonplanet.tv. Retransmission starts now. The free podcast is, again, at Infowars.com in the Alex Jones Radio Show section.